Welcome to Staton the Obvious, the podcast where we explore the truths about growth and change that should be obvious, but often aren't. I'm Gerard Staton, NLP Master Coach and Clarity Guide, and each month I sit down with leaders, entrepreneurs, coaches, and thinkers to uncover mindset shifts, hard-earned lessons, and inspiring stories that help us live and lead better. In today's episode, I'm joined by Rich Gittings, founder of North Carolina Legal Services. Rich shares his powerful journey from personal setbacks to building a nonprofit law firm that's closing the justice gap across the state. It's a conversation about resilience, vision, and what it really takes to turn values into actions. Good. Wow. The good news is I already started recording. Cool. So I am really excited to talk to you, Rich. You might be the person that I've known the least of all of the first few guests on the podcast, and still it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
It's like I was thinking about it, and in fact, I told Molly, yeah, how'd you meet Rich? She's like, yeah, I've met him, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, wait, you've known him longer than I have. How can that be? Because I feel like I've known you for a while now.
Yeah.
Really, as we've been talking about this podcast, we're talking a lot about entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial mindset. We're not talking to all entrepreneurs, but we are talking to a lot of people that are um, entrepreneurial. And we've talked a little bit about that, you and I, for sure, but we've talked about it on the podcast. So, really, the big opening question is tell us a little about you to start leaning into how did entrepreneurship really affect you, and why is this a thing that you've sort of aspired to?
Yeah. So I've lived in Durham for 9 years. Grew up mostly in Arizona. Came here for grad school. I was originally planning on just being here for 4 or 5 years. Student
That's how a
pass.
lot of people
I
are.
know. Yeah, I got sucked in because I love Durham. So yeah, I got to Durham. Really liked it here immediately. I came from Idaho, which I don't know if it's the contrast. There are a lot of great things about Idaho. It's a beautiful
Hmm.
state, but I lived in a small town. There wasn't much to do. And just really fell in love with Durham very quickly. My plan was to do a master's degree in public policy in law school and then move up to DC to work in healthcare reform.
Oh,
So,
I didn't know that part. That's cool.
yeah, so, at the time I figured, this is 2015. Figured Hillary Clinton's probably gonna run for president. She seems interested in healthcare reform. I think she has a good shot. Some weird things happened politically in 2016, and
A
so
little weird, a little.
little weird. Had to pivot. So, yeah. So after I graduated, I thought maybe I'd join a campaign because the 2020 presidential race was gearing up. This was summer 2019
Yep.
when I graduated. And I got a few offers, but not from anybody that I thought had a chance of winning that I also wanted to win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, so I kind of, was looking around trying to figure out what I wanted to do, getting ready to take the bar. And then a couple weeks before the bar, I actually got hit by a car when I was walking across the street. And I got messed up pretty bad. I had a pretty bad concussion, tore my bicep tendon, and had post-traumatic arthritis in my knee, and so I couldn't take the bar. I was just in bad shape.
Yeah.
So I figured, okay, I'll take the bar next year. I had to freelance, some freelancing because I had PT like at weird times in the middle of
Hmm.
the day, so I couldn't really have a job. Um,
We were talking about that earlier. You pretty much go when they tell you to go, or you
yeah,
don't get PT that
yeah,
week. Or
exactly. Yeah, so I had to have a flexible schedule, and I also couldn't sit for very long.
oh wow.
Yeah, because my hip was really messed up from the accident. I was just walking across the street, and the person was turning and hit me on my left side, so my left hip and whole left side got messed up. Um, so yeah, so I needed to be able to work from home on a flexible schedule. So I started freelancing, started doing ghostwriting for politicians, writing policy papers, stuff like that, leaning more on my policy background than on law. And then COVID happened. So I was planning on taking the bar that summer, but then I didn't know they'd even administer it.
Yeah.
So I kept freelancing. Didn't sign up for the 2020 bar. Took the bar in 2021. I figured, I was kind of by then. I was kind of frustrated with the freelancing. I was like, this isn't why I went to grad school.
Hmm.
I want to do something related to healthcare access. During law school, I had worked at a court where they do Medicaid appeals.
Yeah.
So in North Carolina, the process is that, everything's on a schedule, right? So they know, 95% of people who have meniscal tear need X amount of physical therapy per week, and then it tapers off over time. And if you have more, if you need more than what's typical, you can request more, but you have to submit documents and testimony from your doctor or whatever. And if it gets denied, which it often does, because often people on Medicaid either don't really have the time to take to figure out how to do it right,
Yeah.
or um, they don't get help doing it because at the time there weren't resources for people to apply for things like that.
Yep.
And so they would have to appeal the denial at court in Raleigh. So legal aid had been doing those sorts of appeals for a long time, but then they ran out of grant funding. I think before I even got to North Carolina.
Yeah. A
Um,
little while.
so yeah, so I thought, okay, well, I'll start a law firm doing these Medicaid appeals. I talked to a couple organizations that had been funding it, and it seemed like they were potentially interested if I had a few successful cases,
Yep.
maybe I could get some grants. Um, then from there, I left what I was doing. I was working at a tech company doing kind of bringing compliance in-house from a law firm. So it was a nice blend of my skills, developing like standard operating procedures, stuff like that. So I left that job and started getting ready to take the bar. Um, getting ready to start this firm. And a few weeks after that, the legal aid had announced that they got a grant to do Medicaid appeals again. So I had been emailing them saying, hey, you used to do this. I'd love to chat with somebody. I'm interested in starting a firm to do this. And nobody really ever got back to me. Just legal aid's very busy. So I
Yeah.
don't I don't blame them at all. But then when they announced the grant, I emailed them. I was like, hey, I'm very clearly interested in doing this. Can I get an interview? Um, and they did interview me and they hired internally. I ended up getting offered a different position, but it was a bad fit for me for a lot of reasons. So I turned it down. But that whole process showed me a lot about where the gaps are in
Hmm.
access to legal services. So that's what led me to start my firm today, where we try to fill the gap between free legal services like legal aid and traditional firms, which are unaffordable to a lot of people.
Nice. Did you initially plan on starting your firm as a nonprofit?
Yeah.
So it's always been that idea from the beginning.
Yeah.
What was that process like, or was it pretty immediate? I know when I started my nonprofit, there was a lot of arguing amongst myself and a few of my mentors about whether it should be a nonprofit or not. And I think my big worry was that as a business coach, if I'm helping other people with their business, we should also show that we're making a profit, that we are, and
hmm
I say in air quotes, an actual business. Once I started running a nonprofit, I realized, oh yeah, very actual business. A lot of the things are very similar. Did you have any of that, or were you pretty certain from the very beginning you were going to be a nonprofit?
I never thought about it seriously because a lot of the obstacles to doing this, there are a lot of benefits to running as a nonprofit, and the benefits to not doing it as a nonprofit did not outweigh the
Yeah,
benefits, if that makes sense. I
yeah,
said that really
absolutely.
poorly. Yeah, so just did a cost benefit analysis. Law firms have a lot of limitations in their ability to give referrals unless it's to a nonprofit. Courts can't give referrals unless it's to a nonprofit. So just the business development side alone, it was pretty clear that being a nonprofit was going to be much better than being for profit. There's also, Google for nonprofits, which,
Hmm.
you get a lot of advertising, other benefits, DocuSign. I think I pay $70 a year or something like
Yeah.
that. So there's a lot of those benefits. that really helped me start the firm.
I think even things like Salesforce, which I used for a while,
Uh,
it was way too big for what I
yeah,
needed, but
yeah.
same thing. There was like a nonprofit price that was
I looked at
insane.
it. It's still insane. Yeah. Um. So so yeah, I never really thought about it. And then just from like what do I don't want to do with my life perspective,
Yeah.
I would love to get this firm. It's called North Carolina Legal Services. It started out, it was called Bull City Legal Services because originally I was just planning on serving the Durham community, and
Yep.
then very quickly I became aware that, there are huge problems statewide. So, but once this firm is going, I don't know that I want to do this my whole life,
Right.
so I would like to create something that kind of outlives either me literally or my involvement in it. So probably always stay on the board or be involved in some way, but it's more about creating like structural change to the system because there's trying to address a real market failure. So if the firm was a for-profit firm, I can just imagine down the road somebody would say, oh, well, if we tweak this, we can maybe manage this better. And then over time, it just kind of becomes less and less affordable and
Mhm.
less mission driven than what I'm really hoping for.
Yeah. 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 That's a real, I mean, mission creep at any given time can be
Mhm.
rough, but I think you're right. If you're a for profit, someone will alter things a little bit.
Yeah,
It could take years,
with
but
good
eventually, with
intentions.
totally
Mm,
good
yeah,
intention. But that's also their responsibility, right? Whoever is running the organization, they got a fiscal responsibility to
hmm
make the organization run better and be more profitable. So, yeah, I think that's a legit fear. That's awesome.
yeah. So what I'm really hoping for is, right now we serve 7 counties: Durham, Wake, Orange, Lee, Harnett, and Cumberland, and then Mecklenburg. We just started serving Mecklenburg County a few months ago. So ideally, to me, what I would like to do is use the revenue from the more urban parts of the state to subsidize services in more rural parts where there really just are no legal services in a
Yeah.
lot of these counties. Even, you get up to Johnston County, which is right by Raleigh, pretty limited access to legal services. If you put up a heat map of North Carolina where all the lawyers live
Hmm.
next to a heat map of where all the money in the state is, it's the same map. So there really is a huge deficit of legal services in a lot of these more rural communities. So ideally, I would like to have it set up so that way there's some sort of legal services being offered by the firm in every county where there's not currently already a sliding scale firm.
Right.
There's Inner Banks, which is a sliding scale law firm out by the coast, as you'd guess by the name. They do a lot of bankruptcy. They do some immigration and other um, practices. And then there is Triad Legal Services
Hmm.
in the Triad, and but they seem pretty content with their geographic scope. They're doing great work. Um, you know, Sarah Beth Withers runs Inner Banks. She's been doing it for I think maybe 8 years now. She's awesome. And so whenever I've had any questions, she's been willing to like be a mentor to me, which I really appreciate. But yeah, the goal is to make it so that way either between one of those two firms or my firm, there's something in every county.
Ah, I love that. I also love the idea that you're already talking about leaving. You've got your own exit strategy. I've talked about this with a few people, and there's this idea of not necessarily founders fatigue, that's more on your side, but then a lot of organizations, when the founder just hangs around for a long time, it can really inhibit growth of an
Mhm.
organization like yours, with a lot of nonprofits, because having been the head of mine for just over 10 years, as change started happening, I felt myself starting to fight that change. Like, my way is the best way. I
Mhm.
started it for this reason. I even brought in board members specifically to not necessarily counter me, but my initial board were all yes men. If I said, "Oh, I want to change the logo to four monkeys fighting in a ring," then
Yeah,
they're like, "Well, if you think so, right?"
yeah.
And not to discredit them in any way, I brought them in specifically because they cared about me
hmm
more than they did the organization. But there was some point where that had to switch, and I
hmm
started bringing in board members who cared about the work more,
Yeah.
and that was a little harder for me.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. I mean, I have and maybe it's just because that, experience I had getting hit by the car.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I could get hit by another car any day now. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So, but I don't want the firm to die if I die, or if I am disabled in some way from something like that happens. So, yeah, so I, kind of trying to begin with the end in mind, as they say. So at first, I certainly had friends who were on my board. I think that's pretty normal for
Yeah. I think
nonprofits,
so too.
but I also think that you need to get off of that as soon as you can because, like you're saying, what value are they adding, right? Because at first, any nonprofit, any organization is really dependent on the person who's at the helm running it. And the sooner that the firm is not completely dependent on me and my energy and my resources, and my interest, frankly, I think the better off the firm and, the state, frankly, will be.
Yeah. No, absolutely love that. You're not only doing medical services though, is that
We
correct?
don't do medical services at all, actually. So legal aid, when they got that grant to do Medicaid appeals, I went the other way because they're already doing it. So it's not
Nice.
a need. So we do a lot of family law, tenancy issues. I'm currently working on. I got an MOU with the city of Durham to do eviction diversions to
Mhm.
supplement a program they're doing with legal aid. So I'll find out in the next few weeks if that went through. And if we are, then we'll be doing mediation between landlords and tenants to try to prevent
Nice.
evictions. Um, we do a lot of nonprofit and small business work. So everything from developing formation, I should say, of the nonprofit or small business from articles of incorporation to filing as a nonprofit, all the way to like dissolution or merging, if that's what they end up doing. And in between compliance, developing standard operating procedures like employment practices, negotiating contracts, whether they're like with vendors or leases, things like that. So, whatever support nonprofits need, and small businesses as well. And small businesses and nonprofits also get highest discount that we offer. So our firm offers, the way that we qualify to be a nonprofit is because we have fees on a sliding scale.
Yep.
So the less individuals make or families, the less we charge per hour, down to 50% of the market rate. And then organizations that are either a non-business or qualify as a small, as a organizations that are a nonprofit or qualify as a small business under the SBA definition, also get the 50% discount.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a great deal. Like I recently did a business purchase agreement for somebody. Um, Typically the market rate for business purchase agreement, the legal services, is 1% of the value of the business. So this would have been it was $1 million purchase, so it would have been $10,000. But because we charge by the hour and they were getting a discounted rate, it ended up being like $2,200 or something. So it's way cheaper.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Especially for a small business that's, or a family that is trying to get into something like this. Like
Yeah,
the money is daunting.
yeah, it is. Yeah, and a lot of what I spend my time doing is the administrative side because typically law firms don't take a case unless the person can pay the full estimated fee up front.
Mhm.
So not only do we offer sliding scale fees, so the fee itself is less, but we work with people on payment plans so that way they can make payments throughout the course of the case rather than, if you have a child support case and you're paying $400 per hour, it's not uncommon for a case like that to take 30 hours. So it'd be $12,000 up front. So for us, it'd be $1,500 to start the case. And then we just set them up on a payment plan. They make 3 or 4 more payments throughout the course of the case. And, it might take 7 months to go through
Yeah.
the case. And that's a lot more affordable for a lot of people. So none of the clients that we've had so far would have had a lawyer if my firm didn't exist. So it's really filling a need. About 70, last I checked the numbers, it's been a few months, but about 73% of our clients have been female. So 93.3% of our clients make less than 250% of the federal poverty level. So for an individual, let's say for a single parent, um, Federal poverty is $20,440. So 250% of that's $51,100 per year. So they make less than like $26 per hour. Um, so 45.6% of our clients are people of color, 73.3% are female, 17.6% have a case that is related to or arising out of domestic violence. So,
Wow.
yeah, so, it's pretty common for example, legal aid. Legal Aid's a great organization. It's a nonprofit law firm. It's the largest law firm in North Carolina, and all of the services that they offer are free. So if you qualify, that's awesome. There's an eviction diversion program that currently exists in Durham. If you reach their income requirements, if you make less than, I think, 125% of the federal poverty level, again, not much, that would be $25,000 for two-person family. They'll represent you for free and they'll fight the eviction, which is great. But the number of services that they offer are pretty limited, and the income thresholds are also pretty low.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you are experiencing domestic violence at home, they will provide you with an attorney for free. There are no income restrictions on that because often, it's often a female, and the female is often reliant on their husband's income. So they don't consider it in those situations. But they usually can't do child support, custody, visitation, divorce, how we're going to divide the house and assets. So often they'll come to us for that, and they'll work with legal aid on it's called the domestic violence protection order. Um, so we have a lot of those cases. Also, a lot of people who have gotten a domestic violence protection order with legal aid and they need help getting out of their lease because their landlord, there's a law that says that if you have a restraining order or domestic violence protection order, your landlord has to let you out of your lease so that you can move because maybe you're being stalked or something like that.
Right.
So nearly 1 in 5 or about 1 in 6 of our cases are something related to that as well. Yeah. So there's a huge need in North Carolina, unfortunately. So the firm has been growing very quickly. Um, this year, I've really reached my personal limit for how many cases I can manage on my own. So we have 40 cases going right now.
That's a huge amount.
Yeah, it's a lot of cases. Yeah, and we've had over 100 in the last year and a half that we've been taking clients. So it's been great. I feel like we're making a huge difference. I'd like to continue to see the firm grow, so I'm gonna have to start hiring people to help me with admin and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you mentioned, which I love, so kind of a segue to it before I get to the question. Durham on its own, at least the last count that I saw, has well over 5,000 nonprofits.
Yeah.
All those nonprofits competing with each other. So many of them are in the same area. So you're competing for attention, dollars, all of that.
Hmm.
But one of the things that you sort of have built into this that you mentioned is that there are three other law firms that do similar-ish work to you, that
Hmm.
your goal was to make sure that at least one of you is in every community or county. Did you get like where did that idea come from? Because not a lot of people think it. We talked about this at another podcast, and I believe you and I have talked about this. There's this desire to not just see a cure for cancer, but to be the cure for
Hmm.
cancer. And I think the idea that nonprofits are willing to share that responsibility, it's maybe it's not completely rare, but it's rarer than it should be. And it seems like that's sort of built into what you've got here. How did that come about?
Um, just meeting with the people who are doing the work,
Yeah.
there's a huge need statewide. So there's absolutely no reason for me to go into a community that already has these services and start competing, right? I'm just adding friction to my growth. I'm adding friction to their, whatever they're doing. It just isn't necessary.
Yeah.
So, the only reason to me why I would go into the triad or the inner banks is just like ego, and
Right.
so I just try to remove my ego from the situation. I think that, if I was ever going to offer services, and this is one thing that I do a lot right now, I spend a lot of time meeting with organizations that offer free legal services.
Hmm.
to make sure I understand what they're offering. Because then if somebody comes to me and they say, I've got a kid, they are dyslexic, they're not getting the help that they need in school. I know I can send them down to Duke because Duke has a student-run clinic. Well, it's not student-run, but Duke has a clinic for students at the law school where the professor, teaches students how to do these sort of IEP lawsuits against school districts to try to get students the assistance that they need. So I don't need to do it, right? So
Yeah.
I could start doing special ed. Um, there's no reason for me to if Duke can do it. Duke has a limited ability to do it, so I
Right.
probably will start doing special ed down the road because they are not, their mission is not legal services, it's education, right? So as soon as they have enough cases to teach the students and to run the courses, then they stop taking them. Um, but yeah, there's just no reason to. If my mission it really is to help people receive affordable legal services, then I don't need to go in places where they already are affordable legal services or to
Yeah.
be charging people for services that are available somewhere else for free. So a lot of times, I get a lot of people who email me and they say, "Hey, I need help with domestic violence protection order." I send them over to legal aid, and sometimes they come back to me because sometimes legal aid has too many cases they can't take anymore,
Yeah.
and then we'll do it. But the mission is to make sure that people have access. And so if access already exists somewhere, then there's no reason for me to stick my nose in it.
I love that. It's unfortunate, but I think that it's pretty rare. I think, especially with a lot of nonprofits that I know, we talked a little bit about mission creep, and that's one of them. For good reason. You see a group of people that you care about, that you're trying to help. One of my mentors used to say, "No one has only one problem," and so if you're helping with legal services or housing or entrepreneurship or finances or whatever it is, there's some other things in there too, and we want to scoop them up and try to solve that problem too. And so you start seeing nonprofits that do so many things,
Mhm.
whether they have the staff for it or
Yeah.
not. So
Yeah.
that being able to focus like that is really good.
Yeah, my concern is like, the Swiss Army knife problem. The Swiss Army knife can do a million things and it sucks at all of them.
Yes.
Like I would rather form a partnership with an organization that's doing X or Y rather than try to do it myself and not do it as well and then also make something else that like because my attention is shifting, this other thing I was doing really well maybe begins to suffer.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome. Generally, the last question that we ask for people is if you have any advice for anyone. Now, that advice could be if anyone wants to start a business of their own, if someone wanted to start something doing legal services themselves, how do they go about it? What's the sort of thing you would say?
I would say really look for where your passion, your skills in the market meet. Because if you can find that, then you'll be able to, potentially achieve success. Um, and be flexible. Like if you're, like my whole story, I was talking about, I originally wanted to go do this, and then I ended up wanting to do this, because I knew what my core values were. Like at the heart of what I wanted to do was do something that was alleviating poverty, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't end up doing healthcare reform. I didn't end up doing Medicaid appeals, but I am doing something that I'm passionate about. So be flexible because you never know and then just go do it, right? Like as soon as you start doing the thing, you're going to learn if you're flexible while you're doing it. Talk to people who are experts, talk to people who have done what you've done, be humble and just be willing to change. Um, because you really just don't know what the market or the field or the need looks like until you're really up against it.
Yeah.
I spent probably about a year between coming up with the idea of my firm, looking at what other people were doing. There's like a sliding scale firm in Seattle that really inspired this whole thing. Only did immigration, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and so when I was doing the research, I saw this and I was like, okay, how can I take this and make it my own? And I tweaked the business model and I tweaked, the types of services. We don't do immigration really. at least at this point. And I just tried to make it my own. And then as soon as I started having issues, I made adjustments, and
Yeah.
I talked to as many people as I can who have done what I'm doing. There aren't too many people who've started nonprofit law firms. And the ones who have, I think I've talked to all of them
Yeah.
that in North Carolina. Anita Earls started a Southern Coalition for Social Justice. I talked to her. I talked to George Housen, who was the one who he merged all of the nonprofit legal entities that became Legal Aid of North Carolina. Talked to Sarah Beth Withers out in Inner Banks. Just talk to people, and
Yeah.
if I have a problem and I don't know how to solve it, just build a team. And I think that if you're humble, you're willing to adjust as you go, and you know what you're really trying to do, you'll be successful.
I love that.
And plan to fail safely.
Yeah.
Like I mean, because sometimes sometimes things just don't work out.
Yeah.
I had about a year's worth of savings, where I knew I could do this for about a year, and then if I just fell on my ass, then I could go back
Yeah.
and find a job or whatever. But yeah, plan to fail safely
That's a
as much
common
as you
thing that
can.
we hear,
Yeah.
particularly from entrepreneurs. There's at least entrepreneurs that I find to be successful
Mm,
because there's this thing that I've been hearing lately that really bothers me, and that is have no plan B.
no.
If you have a plan B, then you won't dedicate to all of you won't dedicate all of guns toward the one thing.
Yeah.
And that is so dangerous, and especially dangerous for people who are on the edge in any way. If you've
Oh
got a
yeah.
year of savings,
Oh yeah.
great. If you got a month of savings,
Yeah.
a plan B is a good idea.
Think it's that whole, Hannibal burned his ships thing. And people just think like, or they romanticize it, and it's just nonsense. I
Yeah,
don't know if it's Hannibal, it's probably Caesar or somebody, but no,
like
man, like
Hannibal's right, but yeah,
it could
anyway,
be. I'm sure many people have done it throughout history or
yeah,
life, or said have done it. It's just like romanticized nonsense. Like
yeah,
because especially the more commitments you have in your life. I don't have a car bill. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a lot of things. If I really need to, I can probably get my expenses. I live with my partner, so I could probably get my expenses down to about $2,000 a month
yeah.
if I really need to. I've got a lot of flexibility in my life. So, but if you got a kid, you got a partner who can't work or isn't working, I mean, people rely on you. You know what I mean?
People rely on you,
Yeah. So,
and so this is great, but sometimes you got to be ready to pull the plug. And we're not trying to say not to go for your dream or
oh
the thing
yeah,
that's
yeah.
important, do it. But I think a plan B and a plan C
Hmm.
sometimes are really good to, have. And I think that being prepared to fail softly, that's really good.
Yeah. And I think the idea behind not having a plan B only works for people who aren't hungry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that only works if you're trying to motivate yourself. But if you're already motivated, just do the thing and be ready to pivot as much as you need to or as much as you can.
Yeah. I think the other thing I see sometimes with small businesses in particular is that if they fail particularly hard,
Uh-huh.
they will never do it again.
Yeah.
And I have seen some of those that are really sad because the people were great entrepreneurs, they were very creative, they were able to figure out a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
but they were fighting an uphill battle from the beginning. Either a product wasn't good, or in a lot of cases the product was great, but kind of as you're saying, someone is in that area already doing that.
Hmm.
And so they put everything in it, and when it doesn't work, there's like, well, entrepreneurship is not for me. And that was never the case. That if they'd had a better product or a different service or even a different location, they could have soared.
Oh yeah. Well, I think a lot of times people who are entrepreneurs aren't salespeople, right?
Yeah.
And so you really do have to, like, the number one reason uh in my experience that any business fails is they're not getting sales.
Yeah.
So if you are figure out and just be humble, just do like a real assessment, look yourself in the mirror, figure out what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and if you're great at developing a product and you're great at leading a team, but you're terrible at sales, find somebody who can do the sales for you. If you don't have the money to pay them, negotiate a commission. Like just figure out what your strengths are, your weaknesses, your obstacles, and just be very clear-eyed about it. Don't wish cast and say, oh, well, the firm is going to start growing at this rate or whatever. Um, that's where the flexibility I was talking about is really important because nobody's good at everything.
Yeah.
And so if you can build a team, figure out how to get people to support you, um, you'll be much more successful than if you think you have all the answers.
None of us have all the answers. Not a single one of us.
Most of us don't have more than a few. So,
Amen to that. Dude, this was awesome.
yeah, thanks for having
Just
me.
anytime. I love talking to you and talking about this. Absolutely fascinating. And I know people got some nuggets. So I don't know if we have a comment section, but if we do, I'll let you know what people say.
Yeah, I never read my comments.
Nope. I never did. Never did. So
Yeah.
I'll see people are like, oh my God.
Thank you for tuning in to Staton the Obvious. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who might find it helpful. You can follow us on Instagram at Staton the Obvious for updates and bonus content, or you can go to my website at lumiere-strategies.com. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing forward.